Can Sorting Robot by Jack Philla. So starting off with the drawing and first sketch of my robot. As you can see, I'm not an artist, but I got the general shape of it down. I decided to go from the smaller wheels to the larger ones just to get some more height off the ground for the line sensors to have more space in the servo that is going to be controlling the rack and pinion for the container, which I ended up deciding not to do a rack and pinion, just running a gear up the side, which actually does control a rack still. So I guess it is still a rack and pinion, but it's instead of controlled from the bottom, it's controlled from the side. Also holds the container up against the Arduino, and there's a small track under it that it slides across. This is the biggest mistake, actually, of the design, is that I put my line trackers behind the pivot point of the robot, which is the two larger wheels where the two motors are controlling. When it's turning around those, and the line trackers are behind then. And in my code for line tracking, what I have is that when, say, the line is on the right side, we need to turn left a little bit, so it picks up the line on the right sensor and turns the left, which pushes the line trackers off the line completely, which just makes the robot lost. So I decided very last second to move those further up. I didn't have too much time for testing, so I moved those up on the last day and got it tracking line. The motor for the front, I have a motor that's controlling the up-down action for the arm, and then I have a small servo controlling the gripping for the can. Right up front, I planned on putting the sensor for distance and the line tracker just to sense the color for the can. It's just so when I'm grabbing the can, I can press it up against the line sensor and get the color right. I jotted down some notes for how I wanted the code to go, which is in the upper left-hand corner of that picture. I have stop, grab, up, release, down, release, line tracking, which is very simple, but basically all that means is when I'm coming up to the can, when the can's within a good distance, I stop, grab the can, the arm moves upwards, releases the can into the container, moves back down, and then resumes the line tracking. It's that simple. So then moving on, we have the first picture here is just the chassis. This is actually, I had to tear the chassis apart and put it back together because the wheels were sliding on the tarp. The material is much different than the cardboard. And when I went to these larger wheels, it had more speed but less torque. So with such a heavy design, all it ended up doing was spinning. I put enough power on it that they would burn out in place when it tries to turn, and then when it would go straight, it would fly. It would go way too fast. It's either that or it wouldn't have the power to move. So I ended up throwing some gears in. I barely had room for a gear train, so that was the first big design flaw, along with the line trackers. And that helped, putting a 1-to-3 ratio on it. In the next picture, we can see that this is it getting thrown together. I have all my extensions going in, and I'm further building the chassis for the arm up front and preparing to mount the Arduino, running all my cords underneath the platform where the container is going to be sliding on, just to keep everything neat and tidy. Here's a picture of right up front. This is an interesting picture, but the line tracker is actually pushed up 4 centimeters in front of the ultrasonic sensor, and the point of that is that's where the can is going to be pushed up against when the ultrasonic sensor reads 4 centimeters. So they're not actually in line, although it may seem that way in this picture. In this picture, I'm showing the miter gear. Maybe that's not a miter gear. Maybe that's a spur or a bevel. I'm forgetting the terminology. But anyways, that gear actually was the death of me. That keeping that all in line, which is hence why I have the zip ties there, keeping the tension in the gears, it was an absolute nightmare. And that is the reason why I couldn't get this robot to fully perform, is because that finally gave on me in the last 10 minutes of the final class in testing. This is my rack and pinion for going back and forth and sliding the container. As you can see, I have the container marked with the black tape and white tape just to show the difference for myself. And inside of that container, I have a wall set up right in the middle just to separate the cans as they fall in. Also, we can see the gears for my arm that's going up and down. I have two gears just to add more tension. They're weak little plastic gears. I didn't want to hurt the teeth. I'm doing a 1 to 60 on those just to add more torque, lift that heavy arm up nice and easily. This is the top down after I have the chassis completed. I have a slot to put my battery, and I have all my wires tucked and installed. So in this code, this is all my source code. It's pretty straightforward at the beginning. I'm including my servo. Make sure I'm including my new ping, which is for the ultrasonic sensor. And I'm just making sure I have all my variables straight. The only motors I'm including, I have my right, my left, which are my drive motors. My servo up down isn't a servo. It's actually a DC motor. That's just to lift the can. That's the whole arm. And the servo motor grab is that one is a servo, and that's just for grabbing the can. Servo motor contain is a servo also, and that's for the rack and pinion to control where the can is being placed. That slides the container back and forth. We have our sensor left, right, and mid, which are our line tracking sensors, and we have our sensor can, which is our sensor that tells us what color the can is. Our void setup is very straightforward. We're just putting a pin to each one of our motors and starting our serial monitor. Our loop, actually, normally it takes me a couple tries to get a good layout for a code that I like, but this one was very natural and straightforward, I guess. We start off with a big if statement to nest our other ifs in, and that is if the distance equals 5 centimeters. And that is just that happens to be where the when the can is right in front of the machine, that's 5 centimeters. So that's how I came up with that distance right against the line tracker to find the color of the can right up front. So we have to put another if inside of all this. So a nested if, which all this does is all that nested if is for is the container, just to tell what color the container is and slide back and forth whether it's white or black. Right before that, we're starting our code off with making sure our motors are stopped, because obviously we don't want to run the can over. Next step is to grab the can. Right after we set our container, we are going up or down with the motor. We're going up first, sorry. Then we release the can, then we go back down. After that, this if isn't nested. This is all outside of that. This is if the line tracker is anything but 5, essentially. Or not the line tracker, the ultrasonic sensor is anything but 5 centimeters. So this if is all of our line tracking. So this first part is if all the sensors are on white, then we must continue forward, and if all of them are black, we have to back up because that means we lost our line. If only the left sensor is black, or if other words the right and the middle one are sensing the line, then we want to bear to the right a little bit. And same thing, but vice versa. If only right is on black, so if left and the middle sensor are sensing the line a little bit, then we have to bear left. However, if it misses the mid sensor completely and this turn is really hard, then we have our only left is white, which makes us take a nice hard right turn, or vice versa. The only right is on white. What a tongue twister. And that's our hard left. And at the very end, we have our motor stop. That is actually, it shouldn't really happen. Everything else is covered. And that is more, that was for troubleshooting earlier on. It just kind of snuck its way in there.
me. I used to be better. Oh my god. Just screws falling off. What is that from? Oh, it's from this.